Christopher Nolan is the only one who understood the assignment. What's up, everybody? So this is my review of The Odyssey, directed by Christopher Nolan, starring Matt Damon and what looks like everyone else in Hollywood. And it follows the story of the Odyssey, written by Homer, but it's not just that. What he did was something that was unique, because he took elements of the Iliad, which is also written by Homer, the Odyssey, of course, and the Aeneid by Virgil. And so it's basically what you've all know it is. It's the story of Odysseus, who, after fighting in the Trojan War, tries to make his way back home to Ithaca, where his family is, and it just takes him forever to do so. And you see what he goes through and what his family goes through waiting for him. And this was just the epic of epics. I mean, that is the best way I can describe it. There's so many amazing things, not the least of which is that no CGI was used. Everything you see is in camera. So that really is a kind of a giant they used when in the forest in that fight scene. You know, he used 7-foot tall people, and then Matt Damon and his crew are their body doubles is what you see, and it's like shorter women that they use to shoot that. The Cyclops is really a 60-foot puppet that they had built. The whirlwind that you see in the sea was created by jet skis or wave runners just going in circles. Now, in post-production, you know, they tweaked some things here and there, but everything you see is in camera. And that is just beyond incredible, just based on what you actually see on screen. You know, that is more impressive, you know, compared to when you see, you know, something, you know, some comic book movie that is clearly a CGI, and it just kind of takes you out of it. So instead of enhancing the story, it just kind of diminishes it, to be honest. And I loved it so much. You know, everything that even people hated about this movie, or supposedly hated, which is my working theory, I thought was just an absolute brilliant choice, you know? And we can go down the list of that. You know, we can start off with, you know, Travis Scott opening the movie. So then the question becomes, why is Travis Scott, you know, in this movie at all? Why is he telling this story? So you kind of have to go back to what stories like the Iliad and the Odyssey, what they even were, how they were even told thousands of years ago. And it was told through oral tradition. It wasn't until Homer actually sat down and wrote all of this that it was actually something that more people could read about. Before that, it was just bards, you know, people who were basically professional storytellers and poets. And if you think about it, who these days actually does that? Rappers like Travis Scott, who you could also say are poets. These are the modern day bards, you know? And if you think about it, the movie itself, when you see it, everything is told through story. So Travis Scott is telling a story that you eventually see. Matt Damon, when he's telling the story to Calypso, played by Charlize Theron, he's telling her the story, and then you see what happens, you know? And this is how these kinds of stories were told back then, you know, just word of mouth, you know, sitting by a campfire, you know, and with every story, and a different person tells it, they put their own spin on it. They exaggerate one thing and play down another, and vice versa, you know, just to kind of make it their own style. So that makes sense, you know? You just have to kind of like not have such a knee-jerk reaction to it, you know, which I think is unfortunately what too many people are doing these days. Anytime you read something negative about either Travis Scott or anything else that I'm going to be mentioning going forward, it's really just a knee-jerk reaction, at least I think, for others to get clicks, basically, you know? I'm not 100% sold on the fact that the people who virulently hate some of the choices that Nolan made for this movie, I'm not really sure they truly hate it. I just think a lot of it is just very performative. The other gripe that you hear a lot about is Lupita. My God, I'm so sorry, but I forgot how to pronounce her last name. So we're just going to refer to her as Lupita. Her as Helen of Troy. Now, if you think about it less emotionally, a little bit more rationally, this is an ingenious decision to make. Because if he had just cast a beautiful blonde, dark-haired woman or brunette woman or redhead, it would have been all right. Yes, you would have said, okay, yeah, she's beautiful. But is this like when it says in the text, the face that launched 1,000 ships? There is something unique and different about Helen of Troy. And if you think about it, if you're just gonna cast another light-skinned woman with maybe a slightly different colored hair, then you could say, okay, yeah, she's beautiful, but I can find another beautiful woman in Greece that kind of looks like this, So there is nothing unique about it. Now, if you are in ancient Greece and then, okay, here is someone who is okay, first of all, Lupita is objectively beautiful. Wow. Like she really is. And then, yes, she's dark skinned, but like it's just a perfect kind of complexion. There's like no splotches, no, marks of, having acne or anything. Is just incredible. So now there is something unique and different about this Helen of Troy, which would get the attention of way more men back in the day, I can imagine, than, somebody who looks like, no offense, no disrespect, but the last woman I saw play Helen of Troy, Diane Kruger, who played Helen of Troy. She did that in the Troy movie in the early aughts with Brad Pitt and Orlando Bloom and those guys. It's like, yes, she's beautiful, but what is unique about her beauty? So that I think that's another reason why like the casting of Lupita was actually a brilliant move. Casting Elliot Page, I know the complaint at first was the rumor that they were going to be Achilles, but they're not Achilles. They play a role that some kind of regular person, soldier who takes the place of Robert Pattinson, who doesn't want to fight in this war. So it's just somebody who is just going to go and die anyway. So who cares who they are? And so like all of these things make sense, but of course there's just a lot of emotional reactions these days, and it's just a great way to approach such a complex text, such a complex character. I mean, I remember having a literature professor back in university where he said that the Odyssey is the greatest psychological story ever told, and if you actually go back and read it, and I remember reading it at least one time in college, and even as confusing as it was because there's so much going on, it absolutely you can make a very legit argument that it is the greatest psychological book, story ever told, because he goes through so much evolution, Odysseus does, changes in character, and the fact that, he is so profoundly changed by the end. I'm not going to give away too much. That the way Nolan approaches even that, I think it's just amazing. Now, I am a fanboy of Nolan and everything that he's done, to varying degrees. But this is, I think, in the end, be his magnum opus. Anyways, those are my thoughts. What about you guys? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Click subscribe, click like, and I'll see you guys next time.